Good evening and welcome. In compliance with Chapter 551, Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order a regular voting meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Thursday, March 27th, 2025 at 6:07 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at Austin ISD's central office to conduct this meeting. This meeting is being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T Uverse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Our next item is under the President's Report. The board wants to remind our community that next Monday, March 31st, is a student and staff holiday in recognition of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. We are excited to honor the lives and legacies of the two Hispanic civil rights leaders who formed the United Farm Workers Union in the 1960s and worked tirelessly to support migrant and farmer workers' rights. We hope our staff and students enjoy the day off and reflect on the contributions of these great leaders. I also want to update the public that our third Future 1882 Partnership Quarterly Update has been moved to our April meeting. While normally scheduled every 3 months, the presentation was not ready for tonight's meeting and will be held at our April voting meeting. Finally, I would like to take a moment to remember Carol Keaton Strayhorn, who passed away yesterday. Her first elected public service, was on the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, where she served for 5 years, including a term as Austin ISD's first female board president. She also served as the first and only female mayor of Austin, and just did an immense amount to support our neighborhood public schools, to make them strong and successful, and to recognize what a strong place they play in a successful community. We want to thank her for her public service and her tireless championing for public education in Texas and for Austin's children. We're thinking of her family and all who care about her. And Trustee Whitley Chu also wanted to make sure I recognize that she was, in fact, one tough grandma. So thank you for all that she did for our community. We stand on those shoulders and many more. So thank you. Our next item is committee reports. We have posted the written committee reports as an attachment to this item on our board docs agenda. It includes committee reports from the Audit Committee and the Austin Education Fund. And our next item is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Boswell, Board of Trustees. I want to start by highlighting some student accolades from the past month. Please join me in congratulating two outstanding McCallum High School students who recently completed and placed at the Austin Regional Speech Contest at the University of Texas. Lexi Peterson secured second place in the Poetry Division. Quinn Stafford earned second place in the Free Speech Division. Both Lexi and Quinn will now advance to the State Japanese Speech Contest next month at Rice University. Let's wish them the best of luck as they represent McCallum High School and Austin ISD at the state level. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of being part of a South by Southwest.edu discussion, and while I was at one of the panels, I met Julia, a McCallum High School junior who was there as a student journalist covering the event alongside the PBS media team. Did y'all know that our CTE department has been partnering with PBS to bring PBS News Student Reporting Lab to our high schools for over a decade? I learned a lot in speaking with Julia. It was actually quite fascinating. Students from Austin High, Navarro Early College High School have both produced segments that have aired to millions of viewers on PBS NewsHour and have had students participate in summer fellowships with PBS News Students Reporting Labs in DC. As part of this program, this year's students from Eastside Early College High School and McCallum High School attended South by Southwest EDU, conducting interviews, and author Nick Stone, librarian Mitchell Threets, and actor and author Reagan Reverd. Currently, we have 20 students that are learning the ins and outs of journalism through the partnership. Julia wants to attend UT Moody College of Communication and become a sports journalist in the future. Now let's celebrate the incredible achievements of our Anderson High School and Lhasa High School's robotics teams as they prepare for the state championship on April 3rd through 5th. Anderson High School's robotics team, Austin Cans, had an impressive showing this season, making it to the finals at the Waco District event and becoming the 7th Alliance Captain at the Maynard District event. They're now gearing up for state and are ready to represent Austin ISD with pride. Meanwhile, Lhasa High School robotics team, Purple Haze, has had an outstanding season, finishing 4th in Waco and 2nd in Maynard. They also received the Rising All-Star Award and Engineering Inspiration Award. A special shout out to So-Meek Che Mu Do Pate, who was selected as a finalist for the Dean's List, a major honor. With their sights set on the World Championships, these students are heading to state with high hopes. A huge congratulations to the Bowie High School Varsity Winter Guard for their incredible 4th place finish at the 2025 Winter Guard International Southwest Power Regional. These talented students put in hours of practice and dedication, and their hard work truly paid off. We're so proud of our Guard dogs and all they have accomplished. Next, a huge congratulations to the Goretzky Middle School Orchestra for their incredible performance at the world-renowned Carnegie Hall on Monday, March 24th. Under the direction of Shelby Dickey, 60 talented students traveled to New York City to perform alongside other top ensembles from across the country. This marks the 3rd time that Goretzky orchestras have had the honor of performing at Carnegie Hall, and they are the only middle school orchestra to have been featured on these prestigious concerts all 3 times. We are so proud of the dedication and hard work of these students and their director. What an amazing achievement. And lastly, I'm beyond thrilled. We talked a little bit about this last month, but I think it's really, really important to highlight just the accomplishment that we have here. Thrilled to congratulate Miss Minda Anderson, who has been named the 2025 recipient of the Texas Librarians Association Librarian of the Year Award. She is the librarian at Ann Richards. One of the things that's unique about this award is that it's an award for all librarians, municipal, just really all librarians across the state of Texas. It's absolutely incredible. Ms. Anderson will be honored at the Texas Library Association's annual conference in Dallas this April. As a National Board Certified Teacher Librarian, Ms. Anderson has been the STARS librarian for the past 3 years. After spending 9 years as the Becker librarian, she's also been named Austin ISD Librarian of the Year in 2018. Her dedication to fostering a love for learning and her impact on our community is truly remarkable. Congratulations, Ms. Anderson. And I do want to point out, it was kind of just by happenstance that she actually is here in the room. So I'd love for her to stand up if she can. Give her a round of applause. Pretty big deal. I know you didn't. Go ahead.
It's a point of privilege just to also recognize the power of her being a bilingual librarian, which is a tremendous asset for our kids.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Trustee Kaufman. And that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you so much. How about the next one?
Sorry, that's my turn. Thank you, Superintendent Segura, for that. Can you please introduce the next item?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Tonight, we have Dr. Jacob Reach, Chief Officer of Governmental Relations and Board Services, to share the Notice of Intruder Detection Audit Update.
Thank you, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Segura. So as a reminder, in June of 2022, Texas Governor Greg Abbott directed the Texas School Safety Center to develop a process and implement a plan to conduct random inspections to assess access control measures of Texas public schools. We are in the 24-25 audit process, and in the months of February and March, TEA conducted intruder detection audits at 16 schools. At least 5 of those schools failed to meet one or more standard during those audits, and will have 60 days to implement corrective actions and submit those back to the agency. That brings us to a total for the year of 68 schools, which is about 60%, and TEA is expected to audit about 75% of all schools every year. That ends my report.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? All right, thank you. Superintendent Segura, can you please introduce the next item?
Absolutely. Agenda item 4.3. At the end of last year, we contracted with the board's external auditor with permission of the board audit committee to conduct a cost savings analysis for Austin ISD. Tonight we have here, joining here in a moment, Greg Gibson, president of Gibson Consulting, Ali Tyla, chief information officer of Gibson Consulting. Gibson prepared a recorded presentation, which is available on our agenda item and YouTube, and as requested by the audit committee, has also prepared a short summary for tonight. Mr. Gibson, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Board President Boswell, Superintendent Segura, trustees. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to present to you the results of our cost savings work that Mr. Segura just described. And with me tonight is Ali Tylan. Ali is the Chief Information Officer of the firm. He was the director for this project. And most importantly, he was the one behind the data dashboard that was used to analyze a lot of data that was behind this work. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank the administration for their participation in this work. We were very pleased at how actively engaged they were in this project, and that they kind of consumed the data that we presented in a very constructive way, and we just appreciate their participation and their feedback during this work. I'm going to skip the full presentation was provided to you earlier, along with a recording as well as our report. So tonight we're going to do just an executive summary and talk about a few of these slides so that we can save ample time for questions. So the objective of this audit was to identify major cost savings opportunities to help address the projected budget deficit for fiscal 2026. The word opportunities is important because this audit is different from the other audit work that we've done for the district as your internal auditor. And that work typically has findings, audit recommendations, and they're usually centered around specific programs or departments or operational areas. This one was different. There were no findings in this audit. We collected a lot of data, we identified opportunities, and then we basically presented those opportunities to the administration for the administration to either consider those opportunities or not consider those opportunities in developing their own list of recommendations for this board to consider for reducing the projected deficit. This work was independently conducted by my firm, but we work collaboratively with the administration on this particular project. It was key that we were able to do so because we're serving a common purpose. Also, the scope of this work included the general fund, which is really what the projected budget deficit is speaking to. And so that was dictated the scope of our work. I'm going to turn it over to Ali, and he's going to give you a quick overview of our methodology.
Hello. The project began in August 2024 and was completed in March 2025. There were 4 major phases of our project. It's project planning, data analysis, site work, and reporting. As part of our data analysis, as Greg indicated, we developed a data dashboard that will be given to administration to support future budget planning and efficiency measurements in coming years. During the site work, we interviewed the senior leadership. Also, Greg mentioned that we were very glad that they were actively participated on all our sessions, used the dashboard like in all our sessions, and they also, we were very glad that they independently identify cost-saving opportunities on their own. In December, we submitted our report to administration and later to the board audit committee for their review. That was our methodology.
The last slide we want to present is just a summary of the cost savings opportunities. And so these are explained in the report. They're explained in the presentation that you've already heard. And so I'm just going to put these up here and let you ask questions at this point.
Trustees, any questions on this? I have Trustee Quintana, go ahead. Okay, I have one question about the school consolidation, and I see, really appreciate you adding a little more, and I know your report has more information, but on the next slide that talks about Austin ISD having a lower average number of students per school than a lot of other districts in the state, and then the comparison you used for schools of 500 students or more, and just trying to figure out kind of how we get to that $43 million number. I know, Fort Worth ISD we look at, which is a similar old district, kind of central city district, but then comparing to Fort Bend, Katy, Round Rock, Leander, and Northeast, I grew up next to Northeast, in Northside, and those are big suburban districts with new schools, big campuses. And do we assume 500 to get to that $43 million? Because I know a lot of our schools, there's no way they could hold 500 kids. They're in the middle of town, they're landlocked, they're small campuses, they were built at a very different time. So how are we getting to that $43 million?
The math behind that is pretty simple. We looked at the average general fund operating expenditures per student, the average of schools that are less than 500 students, and compare that to the average general fund operating expenditures per student of schools that have more than 500 students. This was for elementary schools. I believe it was 750 for middle schools. The difference between those two was multiplied by the number of students served in the small schools to estimate the potential savings.
Okay.
And that's how the $43 million, it's the sum of the elementary savings and the sum of the secondary savings based on that calculation.
Okay.
But the 500 student, there was no magic number.
Right.
That was a number that we used when we submitted the draft report to the administration. There was no comment to change that. And so we thought that that was a good breaking point. And other districts may use different breaking points, just because, like you said, many of the districts that we compared you to were built decades later and at a much faster pace, and accordingly have larger schools to serve their students.
Okay, so to hit that big number, we would have to hit that average. That the cost could be, if that's not realistic for us, then the total savings are.
The cost
could be lower.
It depends on the number of schools that you can and choose to consolidate.
Okay, thank you,
so
that's helpful.
Maps, you have to consider the geographic location, and there may be other programmatic things that you would need to consider. And so the difference in expenditures per student might change next year from this past year, or this year from the past year. So, but that variance shouldn't change much. So the math, the total savings, if the district moves forward with this, will be dependent on the number of schools that it wants to recommend for consolidation.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Trustee Kitana.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering what would be the subtotal from the secondary? Because I know that y'all are doing both elementary and secondary and putting them together, but do you have a number that's just in secondary?
We do. That's in the report. Do you have that, Andy? I'll pull it up.
No. I think it's in the slide. It's in the slide. Yeah. The middle schools, right, it's on the slide.
Yeah, it was middle schools only. The
13.
high schools really didn't have many. Your high schools are all pretty big high schools, so there were no consolidation opportunities there.
So most of it would come from our elementary school?
That's correct. 13.5 million is the potential for secondary, and 30 million is the potential for elementary.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Trustees, Trustee Kaufman.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I serve on the audit committee, so I had the opportunity to have the extended discussion about the report, and I appreciate all your work that went into it and all your time taking, to explain and help us understand it. Your answers around the school closures reminds me of something I think it's important to clarify, and that is in putting these numbers out there, this is not necessarily like a map or a blueprint of exactly let's make this cut. This is providing opportunities where the district would then need to dig into and explore where is it actually feasible to create smaller class sizes? Where is it feasible to have the different savings you're describing? Am I characterizing that correctly?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so I just want to be careful that no one reads this report and says, oh, you could save $1.7 million tomorrow by getting rid of your portables, because there are some portable, you didn't assess whether any particular portable was essential for services or any particular school was not able to be closed for various reasons, or these classrooms are smaller than others for a reason, right?
That's correct. All the
Okay.
detailed work will really need to be done by the administration to evaluate specific recommendations.
Okay, well, I think it's extremely helpful to have these buckets to look at and to really understand, because we have massive budget work to do, and knowing where to look and where to dig is really important. So thank you for giving us this report.
Thank you.
And Trustee Kaufman, I think you bring up a really good point that I'd like to kind of reinforce, given the administration's work over the last several months. In the presentation that was uploaded to YouTube, the team here talks about providing kind of updates to the administration along the way. And so when we talk about some of the work that's been done, even back in December and through February and January and February, including the work around the master schedule or the plan around portable reduction strategy, the work they did kind of informed the starting of our work to really provide the granularity to actually implement a plan, and recognizing it's going to take multiple years to execute some of these, which is why you see long-term tied to some of them. And then also recognizing that's going to take an investment to actually do some of these as well. Portable reduction strategy doesn't occur at a net, cost neutral, cash position. It's going to cost money. And so to that point, it was helpful to get this, and I think it identifies opportunities of exploration and maybe even a magnitude of opportunity, but requires a lot more work to really get into something that is, possible.
Thank you.
And I just encourage people to read the report. Anyone who is watching or interested, I do encourage you to read the report and see the details, so you have a fuller understanding, because there's a lot of detail in there. Thank you.
Yes. Trustee Foster?
Sure. The one thing that strikes me both from the granularity of the report, but then as we step back and we get to a couple minutes to present a couple slides, and in a YouTube thing, is the particular need for nuanced investigation by the administration and oversight by the board. And I don't know if you have a comment on that, where if we talk about, well, Fort Bend ISD has average school size of this, and you have an average school size of that, or average number of students per classroom here is this versus that. I see these big numbers, and I get worried that we can lose the nuance that inform the reason why we have numbers that look like they do. So in other words, how do we guard against making ourselves more efficient while less effective? If you understand the question, and you all are the auditors and the big picture guys, so maybe you have some insights or nuance in helping us understand how to create that balance. Yes, we want to be more efficient, but we don't want to be, and we can't afford to be less effective.
The short answer is the detailed work that has yet to be performed, and the administration is performing that work, will answer that question. Had we been charged with identifying specific recommendations, we would have done more deep dives into some of these opportunities, and perhaps others, to come up with something that was more of a specific recommendation that considered both the economic and the programmatic or effectiveness questions. So with the collection of data, within the scope of work that we had and the amount of time that we had, the opportunities and the economic impact of those opportunities was what we presented.
So you've essentially set the table for us, helped us see what is, and now we're gonna have to do the hard work.
That is
diving into
correct.
it.
The hard work is really in your lap. But
Gotcha.
we're hopeful that this pointed you in a couple of directions that will be workable solutions for you in some cases, so.
Thank you.
And to be
You're welcome.
crystal clear, the hard work is not just starting now. I mean, we started this back as we got updates from the team here months ago. So anybody that's following along, listening to us, I want people to know that a lot of thought has gone into many of these items here, just exploratory to even be able to incorporate them into, as early as next fiscal year and shortly thereafter as well.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Trustee De Urioste. Thank you.
Well, so I wanted to point out, definitely for the people watching at home and the public, you had included here in the clarifications that work was substantially completed before the federal and state government came into session, and that there's some other parts to play. And you note here that this could influence, one, our projected deficit, but also could affect some of the cost-saving opportunities. Some of the ones that you've listed are maybe more susceptible to change, and others are less susceptible to change. And I appreciate that nuance, because I think that's definitely something for the public to understand when we're looking at any of these projections. One very straightforward clarification, I think. You'd put on the timing on some of these, long-term versus short-term, and I think maybe for the people at home, it would be helpful to just describe that a little bit when you're talking short-term versus long-term.
Sure. The facilities, anything facilities related is really difficult to be a short-term solution. And so the facilities and the disposal of portables, which some of those could be disposed in the short term, but the facilities is just there's a long-term planning process for facilities. We don't imagine this would happen all at once. We don't know what the urgency is of doing something sooner than later, because a lot of the variables related to state and federal funding just haven't played out. And so the other opportunities we think could have an impact in the next budget year, so fiscal year 26. The longer term, unless you're really pressed to do so, that those would be longer term opportunities, but we put them on this list because even if they are long-term opportunities, we think, and the administration agreed, I believe, because they're already looking at these things, that now is the time to start thinking about those, not waiting until the year that it happens, because that planning process, and I'm sure there's been a planning process, there's always a facilities planning process going on, but that's how we differentiated long-term versus short-term, is what had the potential for next year's savings and what really probably was an out-year savings unless the environmental factors in the state and federal funding substantially changed in the next, couple months.
Okay, and so I just want to make sure the part that I'm slightly focused on here, but what I'm hearing from you is that some of these items that you've defined as more short-term are potentially less likely to be affected by changes that might take longer at the national or the state level to play out.
I believe that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, any other questions about the audit?
Yeah, I have a question. So to break down the calculation of the 43.6 million of supposed savings from school consolidations. So with that, take into account that if how many schools would be closed to get to that number?
I believe the numbers in the report. It should be on the, we multiplied times the number of students. We didn't identify specific schools because we did identify all the schools that had less than 500 students. Let's see if we can find that.
Yeah, so from what I recall, there was a range, but I think the midpoint of that range was 14, from what I recall from the report. I just want to, feel free to correct me, but that's what.
And is this cost analysis report available to the public? Will it be on our internal audit page?
It will be. We're also sharing it with our
Ad hoc
our ad hoc committee next Wednesday, and that'll be a public meeting as well.
Okay, and then before or after that, will it be posted on our audit page or somewhere else? Where
It'll
can
be
the public
posted
find it?
When we send our agenda and the report to the ad hoc committee, we'll then post it on the website.
Okay, thank you.
There are 49 elementary schools with less than 500 students. And there are
It's 10, less
10.
than 750.
10 that have less than 750. And I think we clarified that two of which are men's and women's leadership academies.
So if we're talking about closing 49 schools, so even the difference between 48 and 49, I think we're from these like big economic, like when an economist is coming in and looking at a number like that, like in our community, that's somebody's school. And would that be assuming that every single child was like picked up like a widget and went where you put them, and their family stayed? It didn't go to a charter school, didn't choose a private school, didn't homeschool, that we kept the exact same enrollment, that no one left because because schools were closed?
We made no assumptions about
Okay.
the student enrollment.
So
and
it
nor-
would be impossible to get to this 43.6 million number. That's not like a realistic savings.
It depends on what you develop as a long-term plan for school consolidation. We believe the potential for that, if you, in a perfect environment, you might be able to achieve that, and by the time that rolled around, it might be, that situation might have changed, because you might have, if enrollment increases, the savings would be less. If enrollment decreases, your savings might be more.
But that's something that's never been seen when school districts close schools, that then they don't lose any enrollment.
I don't know the answer to that.
And so I do, so I know that this isn't like a realistic number. So what I'm really concerned about is seeing like headlines that say, all the Austin ISD board needs to do is like close the schools and they'll save $43 million. Because that's never happened, where we've consolidated a very small amount of schools before, and we don't have cost savings to show from it that I've been able to calculate or been able to get from the administration. So I'm just kind of like wanting to point that out. And like these are like these big, broad assumptions that we asked y'all for, and y'all did the scope of the audit work. So not criticizing the audit, but just my concerns with seeing this, like it looks like we have easy options, easy cost savings, but does that account for transportation of those students?
No, there'll be so many different things to address. Transportation costs in some cases might increase, it might decrease, depending on what's done, whether the schools consolidate into one of the schools that's already existing, or a new school is built where 2 or 3 schools consolidate into that. So there are so many different options for you to operate within, and so you're correct. And it's a great point that there are other variables that could influence this number. We needed some starting point to show what the potential was without making any assumptions about specific variables regarding the impact of consolidation on enrollment, and other costs that could be affected in a positive or negative way due to school consolidation. It's becoming, unfortunately, a more common practice across the state and across the country to identify savings opportunities. And it's unfortunate because we all love small schools and our neighborhood schools. But we're in a position now where we have to look at some of these opportunities, which are very difficult.
There's not like good, yeah, there's no good or fun cost-saving options because we're operating at the bare bones here, and it's yeah, it's tough. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, and in the interest of our Lone Star governance time, I'll move on to something else. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great-
Trustee
great
Quintana?
comment.
Thank you.
I'm sure, as you all know, I'm a little new here, and so this is my first time going through all of this. And so, with all of, how broad these recommendations are or observations are, and with there being so many nuances to each one, and how much we could save or how much we would have to spend to save. What is your recommendation? What would you suggest we do with this information? What's our next step?
You're already doing it. Since we started this project and we had our first discussions when we came on site in November to meet with the administration and then later to discuss, the preliminary observations and opportunities that we saw. I'll let Mr. Segura talk about what happened. They took our information and went off on their own to develop their own list, which I think was already in development, but they incorporated our work, and they really started taking it to the next step. So we were not involved in making those recommendations. So we presented our opportunities for the district to consider, and whether they wanted to consider them or not was up to the district.
Yeah, and Trustee Quintana, I think to Mr. Gibson's point, or maybe comment, the second, third, fourth, and fifth items on this list, we've already started working on and have progressed and have presented to the board a couple different times, just kind of showing the progression of the work. One of them being the optimizing of the master schedule. This line item at $9.2 million is not something that we can realize in the next fiscal year, right? Because of the way the school system works. Budgets are released. We made a commitment to protect 6 out of 8. There are things that just simply can't be done in the short term, but we did create the opportunity to create controls to become better at how we develop master schedules, which will ultimately reduce cost. And then the year after next, develop a process that actually optimizes the master scheduling process. So first it's controls, then it's optimization. And that has been a lot of work that the team has done up to this point. So each of these, aside from school consolidations, that is one that we have only discussed with the board in the work session. We'll have a conversation tonight around kind of what the next steps may be, but all the others aside from the school consolidation, we have progressed and put a considerable amount of energy and time in to determining like what it's going to look like to do it and to do it well. And the only way that we know how to do it is Austin ISD. Plus everything else that's not in the report. There's probably 30 other things that we're doing that we've shared that just don't get to the level of the kind of analysis that was provided here.
Thank you, Trustee Hunter.
Thank you so much for the work that was done on the audit. And as I was driving here in the rain traffic from Northeast Austin, I was listening, and I appreciate what everyone has contributed. And I was actually amening Kevin Foster as I was coming in. And don't have a question, but really a statement for our community. It's important to recognize that closing a school comes with emotional and financial cost. Schools are more than just buildings. They are the heart of our neighborhoods, places where students, families, educators, make lasting connections. The loss of a school can affect how students feel about themselves and their community. Beyond this emotional toll, school closures carry financial implications. Yes, there's a cost savings, but as we said, including relocation costs, transportation adjustments. These decisions that are going to be made, I've spoken with the administration, spoke to a few members on the board, and here's what I know, having lived through school closure 1.0, that this administration, and not speaking for the board, but for my work on this board, we're going to do it the right way. We cannot do nothing. I just want to remind us that there's going to come a point, and instead of being pulled apart, I hope for our community is that we be pulled together. We encourage an open dialogue. We have planning sessions, still meetings. The ad hoc meeting will be open. You can always email, in any individual trustee, you can email trustees as a whole. This is a process that we must go through. There is no other option. I think maybe I've made this quote before, I don't know. It is from Dr. Bettina Love. Education will not save us. We must save education. That is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hunter. Other questions? I just have one more about the senior management positions, and really appreciate you just putting down on paper what we hear from our community, right? And what we have seen in our administrative cost ratio calculations in our first report, that those senior positions, that they have grown over time. And I do have a question. You talk about the savings, you talk about the layers, and I see that you calculated cost savings for those director positions, but the list of senior positions you've listed includes chiefs, deputy superintendents, assistant superintendents. And are those not included in that calculation?
They are not. We
Okay.
looked at all of those positions. Those other positions hadn't changed that much over the past 7 years in terms of the quantity. And so we focused on the largest group, and that was the director positions. But we didn't identify specific director positions. We just looked at the number 7 years ago versus now. And we're a smaller district, yet we have more director positions. And so we're asking the district to look into the opportunity, and it sounds like they are doing that, to try to achieve the administrative efficiency that we had, at least what we had 7 years ago.
Okay, thank you. And I want to give the administration credit for doing the work. I know we're seeing it in our cost ratio in our first report, and I know that's been taken seriously, and our community and board has really been focused on that in our budget and requesting that. And still offering, I know that, our campuses need support as well. So thank you for clarifying that, and I appreciate seeing on paper some of what we've been hearing.
Yeah, and it's going to continue to be an area of opportunity for the administration. I appreciate kind of the way the information has been presented, but I think it's also important, as you mentioned, to talk about the other kind of data points that we track, and recognizing the total cost of the administration does change. Titles do change. And we were talking about it earlier this week that, a cleanup of title between different orgs could actually add, and just because you have a director or assistant director tied to your title doesn't mean they're actually getting paid more or less. So this is a really helpful way to understand there's an opportunity, but there's going to be more information required to kind of get into the details of how to drive all of the costs down.
Well, the nuance on all of this really matters, and I know, these are broad generalizations and not specific recommendations. So really, thank you, Gibson, for your work. Thank you to the audit committee for the support. Thank you to all the administrative staff who supported this work. And I think the more data points we have as we make these hard decisions for our community, for ourselves, the better. So really appreciate the time, and appreciate the chance for our community to see the full report that we've had the chance to see.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Superintendent Segura, can you please introduce our next item?
Yes, I can. Let's see to find my place. I'd like to welcome up Katrina Montgomery, Interim Chief Financial Officer, who will join me tonight to share the budget update. We'll be pulling up that presentation here shortly.
Hello, President Boswell and Superintendent Segura. We're going to start going over our March 27th budget update. This is going to be the first time that we're going to talk about 3 years. We're going to be talking about fiscal year 24-25, which is our current year, 25-26, which is the budget that we're working on, and then also 26-27. So this slide you've seen before. Sorry, hold on one sec. Put it back in. This one? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So FY 24-25, the board approved the budget in June of 2024 with a deficit of $78 million. Now we're projecting that the budget deficit will be $110 million. If we continue on and don't do anything, the $110 million will leave us at 14.7%, and our fund balance is 20%. So we're going to continuously look over these so we can kind of just continuously level set. This next slide is going to show, again, the $110 million projected deficit and why we want to decrease an additional $32 million. We already have strategies of $34 million, but we want to do an additional $32 million. And the reason for this is because we want to get back to the $78 million deficit that the board approved. We want the board, as well as our community, as well as our staff, to know that we're very serious about making sure we're spending with what the board approved. So we're working diligently to reduce an additional $32 million over the $34 million strategies that you've seen previously. This is a new slide that we're presenting that looks at our financials as of February of 2025. And when you look at this to the left, the first circle shows our tax levies collected. The big months that our tax collections come in are December, January, and February, and it shows that we've received 96.53% of our taxes levied. And then in the right-hand side, you see our expenditures, and it shows we're at 63.72%. What we've projected is at this time, at the end of February of 2025, we should have been at 66.67%, which means we are reducing our expenses. So we've been talking about the hiring freeze that went into effect March 1st, and then we've talked about a spending freeze. And one of the things the administration committed to is if we could continue to reduce our expenses, we would talk later about how we would proceed with the spending freeze. So we've just talked about our financial monitoring. Our income statement is telling us that we're reducing our expenses, which is what we want. So that's check one. When we look at our P-card spend, March of 2024, we had $1.4 million in P-card spend. March of 2025, we have $700,000. Now, this number was run on Monday, which was the 24th, so we still had a week, but it shows that we reduced our P-card spend from last year to this year, approximately $700,000. So we know that it's working. By reducing the limits and tightening up, it is helping us. The purchase orders processed March of 2024, the number is $5.2 million. And now we're showing in March of 2025, we still have the additional week to get us to March 31st. The number is approximately $2.2 million. So what we drastically see is that we are doing what we need to do to reduce our expenses, to reduce the additional $32 million.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of take a point and just kind of express appreciation to our principals. You know, I think in years past, we've been very directive in saying, hey, you know, we need to cut expenses, we're stopping. This time around, we really viewed this as a partnership and said, hey, we're all a family, we need to tighten up. And I think what Ms. Montgomery just shared is a kind of reflection and a response to them acknowledging this is a shared commitment and,
Yes.
and kind of work that we're doing together, and just really proud of, our principals and all of our staff on our campuses kind of really buying into what we need to do over the last several months to bring this in.
Yes, and
Just because it's timely, can I just stay on that and just ask, so I'm really deeply appreciative of that comment, because when we start having to do like this efficiency trimming, I always worry that it's a variant of what I asked Mr. Gibson about efficiency versus effectiveness. So let's say I use my P card a certain way, and that is how I make it from a Monday to a Monday, or this first Monday to the first Monday of the next month. There's a rhythm and flow. And sometimes we can say, you know what, we're cutting back on this, or we're cutting back on that, or we're doing this differently. And it can have an unintended impact because our systems were about using things a certain way or spending at a certain moment. And so I'm just curious about how we kind of safeguard so that as we make these cuts that are really great to make, we don't all of a sudden didn't order the supplies we needed in time, or we didn't do this or that with the bus that we needed. If you follow what I'm asking?
I do.
Yeah.
And I will say, Trustee Foster, we've been very diligent in my department to tighten, but we're also saying reach out if you need help. It doesn't just mean no, right? So if you need additional money, you can reach out. We have a document for your P card. If you need your P card limit increased, tell us why. Now, I will admit there have been times where I've said no, right? There's not enough information. You're asking me for a $10,000 increase, but you only have a support for $1,000. But overwhelmingly, we're approving those. So if there is a need, we will approve it. So there is not a yes and a no and a definite no. We're willing to work with you, but what it is doing is I do believe it's constricting a little bit, not as easy to just continue to put my card down, right? Because for me, when I have to pull out $20 out of my cash or $20 out of my credit card, so much easier to put the credit card down. So we are making sure that we're available to staff. I have principals reaching out to me and saying, hey, Katrina, I need assistance. And we are doing that. We're not yes or no. This is the rule, so you have to follow this. We are working with our campuses.
I appreciate that.
And I think the last thing I would say is we've committed to having weekly meetings with all of our principals. It's, if they can make it. But whenever we're moving so quickly, there's just so much happening. I don't want to get into the legislative stuff, but there's just a lot happening. So we're wanting to update our principals continuously as we move into the summer. And as we talk about, what it looks like to be mindful as you spend, what we hear in these Friday meetings sometimes is, hey, this is how it's happening at my campus. This is these are things that I really thought I needed to buy. I was going to buy last month but couldn't buy, and the freeze happened. And okay, that makes total sense.
Right.
We can make an adjustment in real time and then move on. It's been really, really great. And so it's a different way of doing it. It's a lot of trust, and it's working quite well.
Right. And I will say we presented this specific document to the principals yesterday, and they started applauding because they were really happy and proud of themselves that they could not only hear us say, they could see that the numbers are going down, that the additional work that they're doing, the little bit harder it's making, they can see that there has been we're making progress. So we want to talk about on this slide the $63 million worth of reductions that we've done. And the one thing I want to point out is this $63 million is not 100% realized. This is the $63 million worth of strategies that were done last fiscal year and this year, as well as the $34 million that we're doing this year. So we want it to be kind of very, very clear. So if you look at finance, I'll choose my department, you see 16 count. What I will tell you, if you see for myself, finance as well as operations, those are not all necessarily people. There were not people in every one of those seats. What I know off the top of my head for operations, at least 55 of those positions were positions that were open that did not have a human in it. So you can see we have our FTE count, and then from staffing, what are the savings? And then you see our non-staffing dollar amounts, and then you see our totals. So this is kind of just showing you how we're contributing to the $63 million. And on this slide, we wanted to talk about, even though we're working through the budget, we have our projected deficit, we're still getting ratings. We're still going through the process with our rating agencies. So in August of 2024, S&P rated us, and they gave us their highest rating. And then just as the week before spring break, I believe it was March 19th, Kroll re-rated us, and they rated us again at their highest rating. And so one of the things I want to talk about is that they're looking to see not only how the district is doing, but do we have a plan? What is our plan? Can we clearly articulate what we're doing to get ourselves out of this deficit? And then some ongoing work for FY 24-25, we're going to continuously decrease spending. The hiring freeze is only from now through June 30th of 2025. Remember that it's only for this fiscal year, and it does not include special education positions because we're trying to reduce our reliance on contractors, right? And then we have to do that. We have to continuously let Brandy and her team hire so that we can reduce our reliance on contractors. Overtime pre-approval by assistant superintendents or above. And then I'm monitoring the numbers. Like I'm asking for where are we with P cards? Where are we with purchase orders? We're going to start doing more analysis on vacation spent, on vacancies. So we're constantly looking at the numbers. So today, right now, I've talked to our superintendent. I'm not recommending that we do a spending freeze, but we're going to keep looking at how do we get to the $32 million, right? So if we see that we're getting there, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. If we see that we're not getting close to the $32 million, we'll refine the process. So President Boswell, you talked about this. We did want to show an administrative cost slide. We also want to just keep this abreast and everyone aware of where we are. So the TEA standard is 0.0855. And you can see 2021, we were right there. 21, 22, it increased. 22, 23, it went over the limit. 23, 24, it went down. And we're projecting for 24, 25, it's going to be at 0.0739. So we are doing the work to reduce the administrative cost. And the reason why we show this slide is because we want to make sure that everybody is clear that this is not just an Austin ISD problem. This isn't a problem where Austin ISD or leadership or finance or board or whomever, procurement, we didn't do what we needed to do. So we show this slide because we want to be really clear that some of these schools on here are our same size, but these are schools that are in our area. Fort Worth, we talked about before, is considering closing 26 schools. El Paso is a new one. We've added that one, considering closing 8 schools. Another one we've added is San Antonio ISD. That one wasn't there. And most of these are for 25, 26, and some 26, 27. So we're keeping track of what other school districts are going through. I want to be clear when we talk about this, though, even though this is not something that Austin ISD made, it is our problem to solve. We do have to figure out how to get ourselves out of this deficit. So now we're going to talk about 25, 26. So when we look at 25, 26, we're going to start talking about accepting our new identity. When we look at our new identity, what does that mean to us? We want to do balanced budgets, which means our revenues equal our expenditures. So if once we go and talk to Travis Central Appraisal District and they tell us we're getting in $1 billion, that's what our expenses need to equal. We can no longer continuously spend more than we bring in. We also want to monetize property, and then programming, continuously looking at programming. So here's our targeted amount. If you look, this is the same slide that you've seen before. The only thing we did is we got rid of the 0%. I've met with Leanne, the Travis Central Appraisal District Chief Appraiser, and she's like, it's not going to come in at 0%. So on April 9th, we have a meeting with them, and that's when they'll give us our preliminary property value numbers. So then there will no longer be a lot of different estimates. We will have true numbers, and then we can truly start making some firm decisions. So I want to look at.
I want to make a point. We will get numbers in the beginning of April.
April 9th.
But those numbers aren't final till August. right? That's what happened last time. We did 6%, we budgeted 6% property growth, and it came in at 1%. And that difference
14.
contributed to the increase in the deficit that we shared with the board, I think in August of 2024. So I just, even though we're 2025, four, it was 4 when we did it. We're at 5 now, guys. But I just want to make the point that even what we get in April still is not going to be precisely what's going to be used to determine the amount of revenue we get for 25, 26. So I just want to make that point, make it very, very clear. Like, we'll winnow it down, we'll have one thing that we'll budget for, but it still could be impacted even after that.
Right.
Sorry.
We'll have to make some decisions, right? Like, how do we want to budget? What numbers, percentages do we want to use? So if we look in the middle here at 11% property value decline, it's showing that what we're projecting or what our estimates are now is that we'll have a deficit of $123.3 million. And then you see we have land sales and identified strategies. We're going to go over the identified strategies on the next slide for approximately $46 million. We have some budget considerations that we're still trying to shore up for $3.8 million. So when we do the balanced budget for next fiscal year, that means we'd have to reduce an additional $73.5 million. The one thing we want to be clear is that this includes no state funding. In previous years, we've budgeted, including state funding. We're not doing that this year until we're sure what our superintendent says is it's ready to be signed, the pen is wet, and we're ready to go. So we're not including any state funding. And if we stay on this 11%, that'll give us a 15.6% fund balance, which is still under our 20%. What we would need to do is reduce an additional $22 million to have a 20% fund balance. So this is a slide you've seen, identified priorities. You have your master schedule efficiency improvement. Chief Hosak is now leading this. This $2.5 million will just be from us having a system. I believe the system is called Timely. And so Timely is going to help us be able to make better choices. It's just going to be in the first year what Chief Hosak is expecting. It's just going to be a cleanup because now it's in a system and not multiple people doing their own schedules. PEMS reform, $1 million. Reconfiguration of transportation routes, $2 million. We're still doing contract evaluations specifically for TLL, special education and technology. That's $10.5 million. Graduation Prep Academy of $1.5. And then we have some other items there for $2.5 million.
So I just want to pause and take a moment and just kind of connect the two presentations.
Yes.
We had the presentation from Greg Gibson and the audit team just moments ago that identified, several areas of exploration. One of them was master schedule, right, efficiency improvement. And we talked about the $9 million that was identified in that previous presentation as not being able to all be incurred or realized in one fiscal year because it's an effort. It's a long process. We have to think through it. What we've, as I said in that presentation, which I want to reinforce and say here again, is that we're doing the work and we're recognizing that some things can be done now to generate improved efficiency, but ultimately it'll occur in a future year, 25, 26, 26, 27. And this is just a reflection of us taking that information in early, working it, showing what we can do now, and recognizing that other things will have to come later.
Right. So this slide is, we want to show with this slide, all we're saying is we're still working. We're not just waiting. We're not just taking the strategies that we had previously. We're still coming up with new strategies. Reviewing TLL and technology contracts, we've talked about that. Average daily attendance incentive, we've done that this fiscal year, and the last time we reported, it was an increase of 1.31%. So now we're talking about, do we want to do an average daily attendance incentive for our campuses for next fiscal year? Software review, Chief Rodriguez has given us a report, a list of like all of our softwares. So we're looking at our softwares and looking at utilization versus how much the costs are. So we put cost to the software review, and now we're saying, okay, well, we're paying $500,000 and we only see 5 people logging in for 2 seconds. Like, is this something that we need? And so on Friday, tomorrow, we're meeting with Teaching, Learning, and Leading to start talking through some of the softwares. Teacher attendance incentive, Chief Hosak Hosack, right. Chief Hosack and I have been like going back and forth and talking through this plan, and we kind of like agreed on yesterday about trying to do a teacher attendance incentive. We presented it to our chiefs on today, and then, thank you, today, and then we're going to present it to Superintendent Segura tomorrow. Reviewing community partnership contracts, we've heard this, like, are we looking at those? What are we doing with that? Technology staffing and non-staffing, that's something we've also heard we're gonna review. And budget pre-reduction, which is reduced a forced reduction. So on the previous slide where we saw the $73.5 million, if we can no longer do anything to decrease that, to get a balanced budget, we take that off of the top. So our stable state is multi-year balanced budget. So we don't want to do it one time, do a great job this year, do all the work, and then next year go back to going into a deficit, right? So it's doing it year over year and protecting the quality of education. So those are the things that are important to us, what we're working on for FY 25-26.
And I just want to make a point here that when we talk about stable state, it's balanced budget, but it's accomplishing it without having capital injection, meaning that your fixed costs are being paid using sustained revenue streams. And the other main thing about stable state is you achieve and you get back to 20% fund balance. Right. Mm-hmm. Like those two pieces are really what will contribute to and determine whether we achieve stable state, and doing it in a way that protects the quality of education in Austin ISD. So thank you.
Thank you. So this is the first time we're going to start looking at FY 26-27. All of the strategies, all the things we've talked about previously have not gotten us to where we need to get. And that's what Superintendent Segura is just saying. We still have some way to go. Now we're working through it, but for 26-27, now we have to start talking about what is the next step? How are we moving forward? So one of the things, we're going to show you a couple little data points. So enrollment trend, if you look here for 2019 through 2020 fiscal year, we were at 80,888 students enrolled. And then for 24-25, our number is 73,495. So you can see approximately from 2019, 2020 through 2024 through 25, we've lost approximately 6,000 to 7,000 students. The district utilization report, this report is a very nice graph, and it just separates our seats. How many seats do we have versus how many seats are open? So in the blue, it's elementary school, so we have 71% is filled, which means we have 14,000 open seats. Middle school, you have 64% seats filled. High school, you have 85% seats filled, and then in total you have 73% filled. So total seats we have is 95,125, and we have 25,454 open seats. And here's another data point we wanted to show. We did 3 campuses, and we said, let's look at how the student count at those campuses. For a campus with 200 students, we're saying we estimate that we spend $3.26 million. For a campus of 400 students, we're saying we estimate a total spend of $3.97 million. And for a campus 3, a student count of 650, we're saying we estimate $4.86 million. So what we want to do with this is just show how much more, and this is what Gibson's audit was saying, how much more expensive it is to have smaller schools, right? Because you're still having to fund so many additional things. And so then on this slide, I'm just going to read it. It says, we must engage in a district right-sizing process to achieve a stable state. So elements of the district's right-sizing and consolidation plan. First of all, we want some board guardrails. So just like when we originally started doing the budget, we had a workshop and we got guardrails. Like how does the board see us doing this? Integrate lessons learned. We have staff that were here previously when this happened. And so what are some of the things that they would suggest? What are the things that they learned that we can make sure that we do this better? Establish a timeline. Develop engagement and communication plan. Create a tool. Develop a thoughtful transition plan, and in December of 2025, the board will vote. The most important thing out of all of this on this slide is we want to ensure that the plan is aligned with our Austin ISD values.
Yeah, and Katrina, before you move on, I just kind of want to reinforce and say as clearly as I can is this will not be an ambiguous process. This will be a very clear, transparent process. It's one that we cannot avoid, as Trustee Hunter just mentioned moments ago. But I also want to state that if we don't do it, it will be done to us. And I think we on the dais, our team, the administration, like we know our community, we understand kind of the risk that we have to navigate. And I wouldn't want to go through this process with anybody else than kind of who's in the room and who's on this dais. And so it's difficult, it's challenging, it's a place I do not want to be, but the reason we're here is largely out of our control. And I just want to make that point before we close this presentation out, because it's important to say that it's something that's going to be not possible to avoid at this point moving forward.
We talk a lot about feedback, and so the next few slides are going to be us talking about feedback. We had an opportunity, we had 8 sessions here at Central Office where our principals could come in and tell us what are their thoughts. What do you think? Give us some feedback for the administration. There were 49 participants. Of that, 47 were campus principals, and then 2 of them were TLL Central Office staff. And so you can clearly see we kind of tried to break it out between, they had a bulletin board and stickies, and they were writing. It was a very good session. One of the other things we've done is after all 3 of the principal meetings that the budget team and I did on yesterday, we sent out a QR code where we could get additional feedback. So there will be more feedback that we're getting from our principals about things that they're suggesting and how we should move this work forward. On this slide, we want to talk about community engagement. This is 24 sessions we've done since December to get to talk to our community and our staff and making sure that everyone is going along with us, that no one feels like this is being done to them, that they're thought partners, and that they have a place in this process. So far since December, we've done 24 sessions. We did additional sessions on yesterday, which gets us to 25, and then the rest of the sessions are here. And then I am here await for questions. And again, I love the tagline, smart spending for stronger schools.
Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for clearly a lot of work that has gone into this. And I do want to emphasize thank you to all of our staff who are really pitching in to do the hard work. And I think when you multiply those hard budget, those hard kind of savings across a whole lot of people and a whole lot of departments and campuses, it is adding up. And I really, I know that doesn't come easily, and I think we're all really grateful to see it as well. Trustees, are there questions? Trustee Kaufman.
I don't have a question yet, but I have a concern, and that is, it was already foretold by Trustee Whitley Chu that the headlines from our Gibson audit would perhaps suggest that we could save $43 million by closing schools. There's already a headline tonight on CBS saying Austin Independent School District could potentially save $43 million in the next fiscal year by consolidating schools, according to an internal audit. So I would just ask if CBS News is still watching this meeting, that they read the report and clarify that, because this is the exact danger that you warned about, which is that the analysis, which gives us some very important food for thought and a basis to look at some decisions, was already mischaracterized as saying we could magically close schools and by next year be saving $42 million. So I just want to point out the pride I have of being in a district where this work is transparent and where we're being very public about the decisions that we're making. I want to thank our administration for following the board's guidance of saying we want this communicated in advance. We want discussion before cuts are decided on. We don't want a process just going to, how do we smooth this over? But we actually want to have that engagement up front. But the cost of doing that is that we open ourselves up to misleading information, unfactual information that then disrupts the whole process, because then we have people burning down the pitchforks and the torches coming in saying close schools, save money. It's not that easy. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for speaking to that.
And we'll reach out. Ally, thank you.
Trustee Hunter? Trustee Foster? Okay. Trustee Foster.
Yeah, I'm not ready.
Mine are quick. Hi, thank you so much. Can we go back to page 10 or slide 10? There we go. Perfect. Thank you for this. I know we've talked about this. I remember not sitting out there and having Lynn sit over here and mention the same thing way back when. And I'm glad to see this. I really, like Trustee Kaufman just gave us a great example. Perception is reality. It is the perception of many people in this district that if we just fire everybody in this building, we're gonna save a whole lot of money. The work has already been done. The work is being done. I don't know how we can communicate that out to our families and people, the community at large, but that work has been done. Look at that number. Yes, it was bloated, right? But it has gone down. It is continuing to decrease. But again, effective versus efficiency. That's my new phrase right there. Effective versus efficiency. Sure, right? Again, it's one of those things, Kim said, you can cut off your right arm if you got to cut, but you need your right arm, right? Can you save something with that? For sure. But I just think it's really important that we see that. The second one, I don't remember what slide it was on, but the superintendent mentioned about TCAD, and I am just like literally like as nervous as you can be about not knowing that number. And I can imagine that you guys are like, come on. And I wish there was a better way to do that. But I think our community, again, is not comprehending what's happening. Not that they aren't very smart people and understand, but there's a lot going on. And then you just have to deal with the daily blah, right? I liken TCAD to my daughter working for Travis County. She calculated everything out at $13 times 20 hours a week times 2 weeks. And then she got her check and she was like, wait, what? And I was like, baby girl, there's FICA, there's Social Security, right? And it's not that we are mismanaging or don't know the number. We can't know it. And even our best guess is sometimes not quite right. So we have to make adjustments. And I just really want the community to understand that that is what is happening. I really appreciate, like I said, what the superintendent said. It's like, that's what contributed the last time. So we really have to almost wait till the very last minute to be like, okay, now I know I can pay the light bill because I actually have the $200. So that's just where we are. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you for the slides. And if this is like posted somewhere, like on our budget site, is this slide deck gonna be there or some slides from this?
We can get it on our budget slide.
I really would like it to be on that website. So just when I'm speaking with constituents, I can be like, yes, and then let me refer you so that you can go and see it for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You ready?
Yeah. No, it's just one sort of, I guess it's the theme for me tonight. What we're looking for is improvement. Cost savings, yes, but we're not good enough. And we're like right on the cusp. And so we're in this challenging moment. And of particular interest to me is that it's something that Superintendent Segura, you talked about, early on in our conversation. So we use language like reimagining or re-envisioning or rethinking. I am profoundly interested in economies of scale. I'm profoundly interested in leveraging so that if there's any space where two becomes one, the one becomes stronger. If two becomes one, the one doesn't become something cobbled together where we're trying to figure it out. There are absolutely opportunities that come with appropriate scale. And that takes such hard work. And it takes such listening to all folks in all levels of an organization to see where there are opportunities to leverage change towards improvement. So at this point, it's a rather vague statement, but it's something I feel very strongly about and very deeply about, that as we go through any process, that process serve the dual role of, yes, helping us on a budget side, but that it absolutely accrues to the benefit of, say, a teacher's ongoing professional development, or the experience of an individual student whose touch points of adults is this person, this person, this person. And when something changes, there's not less touch points, but there's somehow more effective touch points. And if so, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Trustee Quintana.
Thank you. I know that as a board, we have as a priority to manage our budget in an equitable way. And so I would just ask if you could give us just a quick rundown of how you are incorporating that into our plan going forward. And I know that we're very soon on this, and school consolidations aren't necessarily foretold. We have a lot of steps to get to before we get there, but I'm trying to learn from the past year, and so I would just like to know how we can, if it comes to school closures and consolidations, how we will make that equitable to where we don't see it primarily concentrated in districts 1 and 2.
Right. So the way we do it for creating the budget, when the budget is sent out to departments as well as campuses, they have specific criteria that they should talk about what these funds are going to do for them. So that's how we monitor it for the budget. For the school consolidations, I would suggest that maybe that would be something that we would add into the tool that we talked about on one of the previous slides. That's not something that we've worked out. That's something that we'd have to look at for the consolidations.
Yeah, and Trustee Quintana, I think we learned a lot when we went through this process in 2019, and I think we learned a lot when we went through the long-range planning process, when we, for the first time in the history of Austin ISD, went through an equity-driven process. It was equity by design, right? And it talked about engaging with communities, going to the margins, understanding the lived experiences of those that are going to be impacted by any decision that the administration and the board makes, and bring that into the process. So as we build out what this is going to look like, it's really important that we create the space to develop a tool and make sure that tool is equitable, so that the outcome of the analysis and the work kind of reflects what we want and what we think is an equitable process. I think the challenge that we've had in the past is we will go through a process as the years pass. When I say this, you get to the end and then you say, okay, does this adversely impact historically underserved student groups? And the fact that you asked that question at that point and didn't consider that as part of your process creates this tension in the system that we absolutely have to avoid this time. So I don't want to say that District 1 or 2 or any district is going to be disproportionately impacted. I think that we need to spend time over the next 2.5, 3 months developing the tool using equity-driven processes as well as pragmatic processes and kind of logical processes, agree to that, and then take the next step. And then as the outcomes of that tool are realized, use another tool that determines, how does this impact students who've been historically underserved. So I think we've got good models to build from. I never want to build alone, which is why we don't have the tool now. We're going to work with our community, work with our principals, work with our board. But that's how we intend to do it. And I do think the long-range planning process was a good process to inform this process moving forward. The last thing I'll say is one of the reasons December 2025 is important is because transitions are so important. The transition planning, how a student is going to be impacted, how our families are going to be impacted, has to be thoughtful. It has to align with our values. And so, every time a consolidation occurs, a boundary changes. And so we need to think, the administration needs to think through, are there other opportunities that we need to explore that could address historical issues that we've had as an organization? I mean, our boundaries are they're sometimes crazy, honestly. So maybe it's not the reason that you start a consolidation, but as you're going through it, it's a kind of opportunity that presents itself to perhaps move us in the right direction, ultimately getting to a kind of improved, stable state. So I know to maybe answer your question directly, but I do want to point out that it is a process. It will consider what we've learned and absolutely will be done using an equity-driven basis and process. Of course.
Thank you. Trustees, other questions? I have a couple of things. Looking at the enrollment trend, and credit to staying relatively stable. I think that reflects a lot of good work since immediately after the pandemic. But we also know that we've lost 5,000 or 6,000 students. And I'm wondering if any, now that we really see that this is where we are, we didn't have, after a couple of years, those 5,000 or 6,000 students come back. Has any work really been done kind of in our community? I think this is a district issue. This is also a city issue. Of where those students are. Did they leave the city? Are they at charters? Are they homeschooling? Do we, I know some private schools grew, but have we done that work really as a community to figure out where our kids are? Are we in a place where we're like San Francisco, where we're just losing the share of children, losing numbers of children? What do we know about that as really an opportunity, if we get things right, to try to bring some people back into the district?
Yeah, President Boswell, we do know a fair amount. In previous years, we had a demographer come and provide a presentation, or we would submit it via board update. And we also have information from the 2020 census that's really informed kind of the projections that we have here within the city of Austin. So we do have information. We do know that there have been lots of students that have left the city as a whole. We also have seen declining enrollment for charters and other schools as well. Mm-hmm. So it is impacting, I would say, all the K-12 system in Austin as a whole. And then you think about, okay, well, in a specific area, what are the birth rates? How many students live there now, and how many would you expect to see, especially 0 through 3 that might be entering into the school system? So we have that information. We haven't had that larger conversation with the city and perhaps the county. Maybe that's an opportunity, perhaps in the joint committee in a future meeting. But we can also provide an update, and we'll absolutely incorporate that information into this process. I don't know if I can share any more than
but that's helpful. That is helpful. And I know our demographic reports are really data rich. I appreciate that. I know our city demographer is very talented, very skilled, really good at what she does. And I would love to see this as a joint subcommittee conversation, because I think this does really impact our city as a whole. And I think part of it is just that the supply of housing we're creating is not family-friendly housing. So much of our multi-unit housing, we call it multi-family housing, but it's multi-couple, multi-double income, no kids, multi-single person with a home office housing often, and not truly multi-family, family-friendly housing. And I think that's something we're working to remedy through our first public facility corporation project. We're really leaning into some of those family-sized units. But I would love to see that as a joint subcommittee conversation, because I think we need children in our city to be a healthy city. So thank you for that. I think next slide, number 20, I have a question. I would love a little more analysis of this from the district to find out. We know that our enrollment, a lot of people leave the district in middle school and come back for high school, and that our high schools offer so much richness, that is a magnet that pulls people back. And we know that often either the perception of the reality or the reality of our middle schools pushes people away for those 3 years. And I would love a real analysis of this to understand how much of that underutilization is just about the building and the number of children, and how much of that do we think are people who just go to 5th grade and then leave. And I would like a better understanding of that as we look ahead.
That is a great observation, and we've talked about it, as far as the transition from 5th to 6th, and that we do have families that choose to leave AISD, and many times we see them come back in high school. And so one of the things we would want to analyze is, if we really embrace the work associated with the Middle School Forward initiative, and the middle school experience in Austin ISD improves significantly, I would expect those numbers to climb back up. which means that percent represented the kind of underutilization percentage may be a little overinflated, right? Because if it was a healthier system, then that loss and then the rebound wouldn't occur in that way. So I think it's an area of exploration. I can work with the team and provide an update as we go through the process. But that is a great observation and question.
I appreciate that, and I remain very interested. One of my goals before I leave the board is to do a real, to get to a place where we can really lean into those middle schools, and I know really thoughtful work is being done, and I think there's just so much opportunity to make sure everyone is excited about our middle schoolers, including our middle schoolers. So I think that's such a rich moment in kids' lives, and I think we have an opportunity and an obligation to get that right. So I think that's, there's a lot there. And then I just want to talk for a moment, it's more comment than question, about the right sizing. And I think it's really important to be having this conversation. It's really important to be thoughtful about the number of buildings we have in a district that, we look back to when the pandemic hit, it was 80,000 kids. We look back not many years before that, it was 100,000 kids. And I think it would be foolish not to talk about whether we have too much building capacity. I think it's also important to say, even with the very most optimistic, I think unrealistic, honestly, version presented in the audit analysis, the cost efficiency analysis, that if all the pieces fell into place just right and we could put every kid in a seat and have no extra, it's only $43 million. $43 million is a lot, but it's not going to close our holes. And I think we have to come back and say that this is also because our schools are underfunded. And we need to remember to come back to that there is a choice to underfund our schools, and we're fighting against that as well, and trying to do such good work. And when we have conversations about consolidations, that matters. When we have conversations about whether we can afford instructional coaches that are making such a profound difference for our kid, all of this really matters. And I think it's also really important to know that right sizing is sometimes a word used by people who are blaming schools for their own problems, and claiming we can kind of cut our way out of this. And we can't cut our way out of this hole without doing real harm to the people we're here to serve. And I think it's just really important to, as we have these really hard conversations, and our obligation is to do the best we can with what we have. And I really see so much good work here from our community, from our staff, from our board. Thank you to everyone who is working to help us do the best we can with what we have, and to really keep that North Star that this is about our students. This is about really high quality education, living into our values, serving the goals that we've set, and making sure we have schools that they're taking care of our kids and that our community is excited to have, and that help our community thrive. So I think it's just really, this is heavy, this is hard, and like you said, I'm so glad that we all get to do this together. So if we have to do it, I'm glad we get to do it in this city with these people and with everyone who's leaning in. So thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this. Superintendent Segura, can you please introduce our next item?
Yes. I'd like to welcome up Christine Steamport, our Chief of Operations, and Jamie Miller, Assistant Superintendent of Operations, to share the bond work update. It's been quite some time since we've given an update to the board regarding the 2022 bond program. I know we have some new trustees, and frankly, it's just been a while. So we'll take the opportunity to give a brief update. I say brief, but a lot. It's a $2.4 billion bond. There's a lot to cover. So I'll hand it over to the team, and we can get going.
Thank you, Superintendent Segura, President Boswell, and trustees. I'm here to give a 2022 bond update. So a little bit of recent history about our AISD bonds. As you know, Austin ISD has been around for a long time, but just talking about a little bit of the recent bonds. 2024 was 519 million, excuse me, 2004. 2008 was an investment of 343 million. 2013 was 489 million. And our largest, biggest investment was our 2017 bond. That really changed the map. So if you look at those differences between the bonds, and if you've lived those bonds, you can really see the holistic approach that we had in looking at our aging facilities and really trying to do larger work. I also wanted to talk about, obviously we know bonds are a cycle. We know that there's planning involved. We know that passing a bond, making a bond proposal is part of that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it. We all did this earlier, back in 2013, 2008, 2004, internally. It wasn't necessarily something that we engaged community about. That started in 2017. You might have heard the acronym FABPAC, the Facilities and Bond Advisory Committee. So that was the start of really engaging community and working about our aging facilities. So I just wanted to highlight that. But also the 2022 bond, that was even more of an effort of what I'll talk about in the future and really our long-range planning process. Wanted to also highlight, like I said earlier, the planning comes early. We're doing facility condition assessments. We're doing educational suitability assessments, long-range planning, and then informs bond steering, which brings us to our package. And our educational specifications are also updated. So I talked a little bit about long-range planning, and Superintendent Segura also mentioned that earlier. This is something that, why long-range planning? Really, we know that there are evolving needs of our students and our staff, and our facilities continue to age. So really, this is a proactive approach. We are really anticipating the students' needs as we modernize as a society, and also with our curriculum and how we're teaching students and how they're receiving that and being engaged. It's changed a lot in our classrooms over time. And we want to make sure that we're aligning the resources effectively. Also, holistically, looking at planning, we're wanting to not only integrate academics, but the arts, technology, safety, transportation. So all of these things are really factored into that. And of course, our outcomes of long-range planning. We have operational strategies that we really worked on in a 2022 bond of what are some things and root causes and what can we do to essentially fix some of the things and the root causes and issues that we have in AISD, and also some of those strategies for that long-range planning committee did resulted in our bond-related strategies. So kind of bringing it up next, like I said, we took a new approach to our long-range planning process. Superintendent Segura highlighted our equity by design, and that was really pioneering a community-driven approach to the equity by design model. That is something that AISD is known for nationally. In other districts don't do this. This is something that AISD created, and it's really powerful. We have folks attending conferences for planning, and it's learning, but I know what we did was really pioneering. So I'm very proud of that. I also want to talk about the approach that we had for the 2022 bond. This was to ensure that historically underserved student populations and communities were the forefront of the decision-making for this. We also, it was informed by 7 committees, as you can see in red there on the slide. These were the 7 committees that really informed our process and got us to the path that we have. Like I said, it was comprised of parents, community members, students, and staff, and it was really a long process, but a beautiful process at the end. I also want to talk about bond steering. So the Long-Range Planning Committee, they had co-chairs, and those co-chairs were the ones that really transitioned into the Bond Steering Committee. And so that was able to develop our bond package for 2022. Just talking a little bit about 2022 bond, we know that that's the $2,439,000,000. Generally talking about our propositions, our Prop A was our general purpose. That was $2.3 billion. Just that little green check mark was our approval rating for that proposition, which we are very proud of. Prop B was our technology, $75.5 million. Prop C athletics, $47.4 million. And this slide shows the bond investments by category for all the propositions. And so in the next slide, I'm going to break all of those down. And this just kind of shows in light blue our safety security, of course, where our investments are in high school, middle schools, elementaries, et cetera. And then now Jamie, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, is going to break down these a little bit further.
Thank you. So Prop A, as we mentioned, is the bulk of our bond. This is where the most impact we have to our campuses. We have 25 full or partial phased modernizations. A full modernization, it really entails bringing an entire campus up to current ed specs and really the entire facility up to our current ed specs, the project development standards. And a school can be modernized through full renovation or brand new construction or a combination of both. Partial or phased modernizations are going to have portions of the facility modernized typically over several bond cycles. Those are typically our larger campuses like the high schools. Targeted projects, well, we have 15 large comprehensive projects as well as targeted projects on every single campus. Those are focused on our critical deficiencies, HVAC, roofing, plumbing, et cetera. And then we also have security improvements, which is one of our biggest priorities in this bond. Every campus is getting a secure entry vestibule. We have the remaining of those being constructed this summer. We have perimeter security fencing on every campus as well as window film. And we also prioritized our 4 open concept campuses to improve the security on those campuses. We also had mental health and special education improvements, as well as new buses to ensure that all of our route buses have air conditioning. And then Prop B is our technology, which focused on student and staff device replacements, as well as displays, education displays for classroom and other learning environments. We have district-wide technology security improvements, as well as upgrades to digital platforms and our network infrastructure. Prop C is where our central athletic facilities are being updated. So that's Berger, Delco, Nelson, and NOAC Sports Complex.
Talking a little bit about stakeholder engagement. So again, Austin ISD is really pioneering how we do this process. We build our schools with our communities for our communities, and that's something that is extremely rare. So what we like to call them are CATs. They're campus architectural teams. They are our community voice in design. We have 36 plus active CATs. It is going. We call ourselves the little cat wranglers, but it's really fun. Every school is very different. Every community is very different, and that's what makes it so special. That we have construction process tours. Our CATs get to put on hard hats, reflective vest, and check out what they've been working on and designing and pre-design and construction. And so once that groundbreaking starts, they get really excited. We also have a specific CAT for athletic projects. So we knew internally there are so many other things to consider and so many perspectives that we needed to have a CAT specifically for our central athletic facilities. So that's going well. Community engagement. We bring, if maybe you're not on the CAT, but you're still included in the community, you can always go to the CAT meetings, have public comment, but I think what we also are trying to ensure is that our community is updated along the way. We have community meetings for schematic design and construction kickoff, especially when that construction's kicking off and you're like, well, what's the beep, beep, beep? When's that gonna happen and when's that gonna stop? So we keep those, we keep the community updated, as well as tabling events. We're looking at our school-hosted events, giving design feedback opportunities. Also, we're doing targeted messaging through ThrillShare, emails, of course, using principal newsletters to give information to the community that way, because we know whoever is the most trusted is that principal for that community. And we have a lot of celebrations. We've had a lot this year. We've had a lot of groundbreakings and grand opening and ribbon cutting, so we're excited about that.
And part of a successful implementation of a bond program of this magnitude really requires some program controls set into place. And so we have implemented several standard industry best practices, standardized design reviews, district staff internal stakeholder reviews. One thing we've done new in this bond that is brand new is really engage our facility maintenance staff, our trade managers, reviewing our technical designs to make sure they're as expected in accordance with our project development standards, and that has been really, really instrumental. We also have an independent representative compliance architect to help us with our technical reviews, third-party consultants. We also have city permit reviewers and inspectors, construction financial auditors. Those are pretty standard. We have some specific AISD program controls that we've put into place as well. The one that we're very, very thankful to have with the City of Austin is an interlocal agreement, and that's a partnership that the district was able to work with and develop with the City of Austin that really helps us with permitting, review times, and some other really fantastic agreements that help us implement this bond efficiently.
And an agreement that hasn't been updated since 1994, so we were very excited about that.
We did update that, yes. We did update that for this bond. We also have a third-party construction safety monitor that visits every site on a weekly basis, also reviews all of our safety plans and crane lifting plans and many different aspects of safety to make sure that we keep our workers safe. New this bond, we also have a worker protections monitor going to our large modernization sites that is helping ensure that we're implementing the worker protections resolution that the board passed before this bond was voted on. And then we also have our Equal Opportunity Office reviews all of our projects and our invoices to make sure we're meeting our hub participation goals. And we have sustainability goals for LEED and Austin Energy Green Building certifications, and we have consultants that help us make sure we're staying on track for that. And we've engaged a new project management information system software that's really helping us maintain efficient records and communication on our projects. And then last but definitely not least, we're very appreciative of our dedicated Community Bond Oversight Committee. That's one of our most important controls.
Going into the Community Bond Oversight Committee, of course, the charge for them is to ensure the bond projects remain faithful to the scope and work approved by the voters. And so what they're doing on a monthly basis when we meet is monitoring the budget, the schedule, and the quality of projects, and they're getting reports from us on program-wide challenges and strategies, which Jamie will go into a little bit further, finances, vendor procurement, safety issues, workers' protection, et cetera, and really specific updates on projects that they have specific interest in on a rotation. We've got a lot, so it is a lot to inform, and of course, address any public comments and community feedback. And we just wanted to note that the Community Bond Oversight Committee has been meeting since 2005, so it's quite a long time. So just wanted to highlight their work.
So exactly how do we execute a bond like this? In any project, a single project or a big program like this, you're always trying to find balance in the cost, the schedule or time, the scope of this program to make sure you're maintaining quality. And it's a continual balance. These are fluid parts of this, and every piece of this is very thoroughly evaluated, strategically planned, and coordinated. So part of that, if you want to go to the next slide, please, is the schedule. So how do we take this massive amount of work that we have in our $2.44 billion bond and develop a schedule? Well, we use an equity lens and look at the historically underserved students, and we look at where there might be security needs, open concepts, et cetera, and we prioritize those campuses. We look at how we can facilitate construction, minimizing the impact to the learning environment, especially for our full modernizations that are constructing brand new facilities. And we get something like this schedule here. It is a very aggressive schedule, which presents its own challenges. I will, again, get to that here in a minute. But this is available on our website. This is our 40 large modernizations and large comprehensive projects. This is a general example of the schedule you might see for one of our large modernization projects. We started with our solicitations as soon as funding was available from the bond in February 2023. A lot goes into this before anyone might see dirt moving on a site, and that's something that's really important to note, because while it seems to maybe the public we're in 2025, this bond passed in 2022, we're actually still pretty early in the bond program. So a lot has been happening on all of those schools. We pretty much start simultaneously, but a lot of these, there's solicitation of the contractors, there's a design phase, permitting, and we actually do start construction, as you can see here. It typically takes about 18 months to start seeing dirt move, but we are aggressively going through and working with the city on permitting and allowing us to start construction as early as possible. Alternatively, our targeted projects, we have a new schedule available for all of our targeted projects on our website, aisdfuture.org. We're very excited about this. And the targeted projects, if you go to the next slide, have a little bit of a different timeline. They still might start in January. This is showing January 2024. You still might see about 18 months to when you see dirt moving or construction start. However, the difference with our targeted projects is they typically occur over the summer. And so we really only have a very short construction window. That provides quite a bit of challenge as well. Once the students, the last day of school, we move in, you're taking off a roof or you're putting in a new HVAC unit. It's a very, very critical time for these.
And there's not a lot of room for any type of, oops, that we didn't get it on time. We know we have to deliver these projects in the summer to ensure that the students are ready, have HVAC, roofing repairs ready when they're ready to go.
And I think this is just an important point here. The board sees these as contracts, right? We go through the procurement process and the contract comes, and you typically, as a board, will see lots of contracts come January, February, March. And, if there's any delay on the procurement side or us getting it to the board and that gets delayed a month, then it's a month for the general contractor to get the supplies before they begin to move. And so it all begins to kind of build up against the day that school ends. So it's very, very tight. It always is. And I just want to kind of recognize how it all kind of is this long process, the board's included, and ultimately, if all those things don't fall into place, we cannot be in that school starting construction when the students are out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about schedule. One of the other points on that triangle is the budget. So here's a generic pie chart showing the total project cost of any campus. So for a campus, the total project cost, which is the dollar amount you'd see in the bond book for a particular campus, that's made up of typically what we call hard costs and soft costs. Hard costs are everything related to the physical construction, including labor and materials. You also have FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Typically, you think about that if you were to take a building and turn it upside down, anything that falls out, it falls into that category. So that's furniture, other equipment. And then you also have, we have technology as part of that. As you can see, the construction is still the majority of it, about 60%. That value really varies by project based on the scope, the size of the building, the site constraints, utility, et cetera. So this is kind of part of where we start planning. The soft costs include design services, surveys, permitting, inspections. This is also where we capture funding for escalation or inflation in the market, as well as contingency for unforeseen conditions. So a lot of people, we do get a lot of questions from the community of like, well, we have more money. Why aren't we seeing all of that money? And so it's not that money in the bond book. It's important to note that's not the construction cost. That is an entire cost of the project, including the cost not everybody can see for design and other areas. Okay. So this is one of my favorite exhibits here. We really try to take that triangle where we're constantly trying to balance cost, schedule, and the scope of the projects to balance and maintain quality. Visually speaking, just the volume of projects we have, the sheer volume of individual projects to manage, even if a project is very small, you still have all the steps of procurement, contracting, board approval, and still a lot of the design reviews and everything. So This doesn't just put a strain on the bond staff and our own district. It pulls at the staff of the city and our workforce, both design, professional services, and construction. The aggressive schedule that I mentioned here, it pulls at the volume of work that we can execute at the same time. Meanwhile, we're also battling rising costs in the market escalation. Not only are we talking about escalation and volume of projects that we have, but if anyone looks and keeps track of the cranes in the city skyline, there's a lot of projects going on in the city of Austin. And so we are, I don't want to say competing, but we are trying to work with the city for permitting, not just for our projects, but also, time affects all of these projects, city staff challenges. So we're always looking at ways to adjust these. There's always new challenges. Right now, we're showing tariffs. We're not really sure how that is going to impact us. We're also tracking concerns about reduction in labor force and other things that we cannot control. And so we're always evaluating for future risks, and all of that plays into availability of materials and the cost of materials, the available workforce. And so all of those things can impact any of these projects at any time. And so we really try to get ahead of those and maintain that quality. So want to just give a quick update on the status of these projects. This is really just showing, these are our large modernizations and large comprehensive, the 40 big projects. And really this is showing where we are at in these. You can see construction, we have quite a few already in construction. I've lost track of how many we have, but we only have 4 projects that we're still at the beginning stages of negotiating with the design firm, so, or getting those projects started. So out of 40, we have already started all but 4 of these large projects. So we're really proud of the progress that we've made there. If you can go to the next slide. On our targeted projects, we have 65% of our projects. We have nearly 300 individual projects, if you will, but we've bundled them to how we deliver them. So out of approximately 113 projects, contractually projects, we have 65% of them are in some phase of pre-design, design, bidding, or construction, and only 35% of the projects are kind of waiting in queue for the next year. So we've made considerable progress on those. Here's where we look at the cash flow. What this chart is showing is our projected spend by month over the life of the bond. I know that the print is small here. The details are less important, but what we are looking at on a regular basis is our projected spend. So the blue is our projected spend over the bond. What we do is construction projects typically have a cash flow in the shape of an S. We call it an S curve. The rate of spending starts out slow when you're going through procurement and design, and then when you start construction and ordering materials and start paying out that labor cost for construction, you start to see a spike. And so how we develop this curve is by modeling each individual project based on their schedule and then combining those, overlaying them to an entire bond program monthly projected spend. So the blue is that projected spend. The green is the actual spend to date on the monthly, and you can see it varies from month to month for various reasons. The red curve is our projected cumulative spend. And so what you can't quite see here is we are projecting an overage on our bond. Right now it's about 10% over based on where we are in that $2.44 billion bond. So.
And Jamie, I just wanted to mention, I know you see that spike right there, but if you go back to the prior slide, like she was talking about with the aggressive schedule, we had a lot of construction costs for these first ones out the gate. And so as you can see in green, that's where that big green spike is. So I wanted to highlight that as well.
I think the other thing I'd point out with this curve, it's a very useful tool and helps finance understand when we need to actually go secure bonds and sell bonds, right? To make sure you have enough cash on hand to meet the obligations contractually. And so when you have this level of planning, you can then begin to mitigate, okay, what do we need to do in, a year, 2 years, 3 years? What adjustments do we need to make to get the projects and the program kind of into budget? Because we are competing against all these escalating costs which is why the planning is so critically important. So.
Yeah, and I would like to take this opportunity to put this in perspective. Back in 2017, Menchaca Elementary, we built that school for $300 a square foot, approximately. Harris Elementary, that's under construction right now, one of our first out of the gate, we finalized a price for $520 a square foot. And now the ones we're reaching guaranteed maximum price at this stage are closer to $575 a square foot. And so back in the 2017 bond, that's what we were seeing hospitals built at, much more complex, higher standard, higher quality, much more components in there. So while we do our best to project our cost and account for escalation, this again has been something we weren't expecting, and it's seen in other districts as well.
Yes, and the other districts have been, I don't know if you've heard, but some other districts are going out for bonds for their bonds, or they're cutting scopes. We're tracking everything, and I also just wanted to mention that, yes, we're tracking.
So I just, again, we highlighting some of what's ongoing, the status. So some of the things to look forward to in the spring and summer of 2025. We've got 3 new CATs forming for Andrews Hill Elementary and O. Henry Middle. Those are at the beginning stages of design. We have our first ribbon cutting ceremony next week for Odom Elementary, so we hope to see you there. And we have 7 planned groundbreakings just in the next few months. So, and then starting construction and under construction, by the end of summer, we'll have 27 of our large projects under construction. So very excited about that. For targeted projects, we have ongoing work on 36 more secure vestibules in our elementary schools as well as our high schools going in. We've got fencing ongoing. We're rekeying the locks on every school in the district. That will happen ongoing. Roofing repairs, HVAC repairs, playground installations.
And this is all that work that we are working with summer school, summer programming, because we are in construction in many of our schools, and it's really compressing our programming. But it's also having us be very efficient in where we have programming. So working with student support services and SPED about everything we need to make sure that we continue our programming as efficient as we can during construction.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to our large projects and our targeted projects, I did want to highlight some positive progress on our high school turf and athletic improvements that I know everyone has been eagerly awaiting. We are under construction currently on LBJ's turf and track, and Monday we start construction on Northeast Early College High School. So of our projects that are separate from modernizations, we have 7 expected to start here very, very soon. We're in negotiations with the top ranked bidder at this point in time, and we're working through the details of scheduling. Going back to that scheduling and the volume of work and sequencing, we are very carefully sequencing these projects so that we make sure that we have practice locations for all of the athletics that have to go on spring, summer, fall. So we're carefully coordinating the details of that and working with the athletics directors and the athletics team on that. So we only have one of the targeted high school projects, that's Bowie High School, still working through some of the permit challenges there. And that is related to water quality and the Barton Springs SOS area. And so we did have a positive meeting on that this week, and we are looking forward to getting our conditional permit to start construction here soon. Then Crockett and Travis High are only other 2 that are have been wrapped into our modernization permitting, and so those are still ongoing as well.
I think it's fair to say the city of Austin is not seeing turf at this scale, which is one of the challenges that we're working collaboratively with the city to address.
Absolutely.
It's just, when you do things differently, you have to create a different process, and that's what we're doing.
Something new, yes. And the city has been very collaborative with us, and we meet with them on a regular, recurring basis for different challenges on different projects, and they've been helping us. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So some of our next steps dealing with these challenges that we have looked into or presented on with our budget, we're going to continue evaluating options for cost savings. So we are always working with our procurement services and our other partners to optimize how we deliver, how we procure, looking at ways to best bundle projects to get the best market competition, expand our vendor pool to really encourage market competition. We are always making improvements to our scoping, scheduling, budget, scope to budget reconciliation process. And we are maximizing every effort for grants and rebates to offset, as well as energy credits. We evaluate weekly cost-saving options. We encourage our contractors, vendors, I mean, we're always getting opportunities to save money, and we're evaluating, again, that triangle of like, how do you sacrifice quality to save money, looking at different material substitutions and things like that. So we're always making decisions based on that, trying to keep the end goal in mind. So. We also are looking at reducing non-construction expenses, our soft cost, looking at reducing our reliance on consultants, just like we're doing that on our other budgets. And we are looking at maybe minimizing our new FF&E purchases, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. What can we reuse? We don't typically like to open a brand new school and bring in old furniture or old equipment, but we need to be evaluating that where it's reasonable to do so. And then we are also looking into reevaluating some of our sustainability certification requirements that we have. Sometimes we're still designing our schools to be highly sustainable and efficient, but sometimes going after some of those certifications add additional non-constructive cost, non-construction related cost, administrative fees that could save us money. And then we're also looking at evaluating opportunities to really maximize interest earnings from our bond investments.
And really just kind of talking about more what that means. It's really working with Chief Katrina Montgomery and looking at when we're selling our bonds, how we invest those dollars to incur interest for us so that we can use those monies in other areas. So wanted to also thank you for our listening to our presentation. Wanted to remind you about our upcoming ceremony. We have a ribbon cutting next week at Odom Elementary. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for all of this, and thank you to everyone who's doing all this work. It is exciting to drive around the city and see so much happening that's really going to serve our students. So thank you for that. Trustees, do we have any questions? Trustee Kaufman.
Thank you for the very informative report and all the details on everything. I do appreciate the slide on the softball fields, that has been a considerable concern for my community. And so I wanted to just ask on the timeline for the softball fields, when it says that they are anticipated to be ready by Q4 of 2025 or Q1 of 2026, what does that range mean in terms of when the players will actually be able to play on those softball fields?
So when we say quarters right now, we're staying pretty quarterly because we're in negotiations right now with the contractor, and we have one contractor for 7 campuses, and what we don't want to do is open 7 into construction at the same time and not have enough space. So while we work out the details of that, we're kind of trying to stay vague. I will say that some of those Q4 or Q1 of 2026 was really thinking about the challenging schools, Austin High School and Bowie High School, that were in the sensitive water recharge zones. We've gotten kind of Austin over the hump, I believe, on that, and then Bowie, we're still working through that. So we're hopeful that that might actually bump up, but we really need to make sure that we have somewhere for those displaced athletics to practice. So we're hopeful that it happens sometime in the fall, but we will be able to refine that as soon as we get detailed schedules at the end of contract negotiations. We do plan to come to the board next month for approval on that, and so I believe we'll have much more detailed schedule available by that time, where we will transition away from the quarters to actually give you substantial completion dates where we anticipate being able to use those fields.
Thank you. And one thing I've been always impressed at on our bond work, in addition to just the Gantt charts themselves, but the use of swing space and the planning that's required to ensure that our students have a great facility to learn in while their other facility is being built or modernized. I'm curious then in terms of swing space for our softball fields, because my understanding is that the Bowie, Austin, Aikens, and Richards softball players are playing at Butler Field, which is, as I hear it described, And I plan to go to a game next week to see it myself, but I hear it described as having 3 porta potties that don't have sanitary materials to wash the kids' hands, that the bleachers are in disrepair, that the field itself is ratty and not watered except when it rains, and that the parking is almost non-existent, especially now that the city has removed 40 spots for trail building. And so I'm concerned that our student athletes, particularly our female student athletes who are entitled to equal opportunities as our male athletes, are playing in those conditions. So I'm just wondering, how long will our student athletes have to continue playing on a field like that, and are there other options being explored for where they can have their swing space so that they can play on an equitable field during this time?
Thank you for that question, and that actually got brought up to me during a CBOC meeting, and through some investigations, from my understanding, that Butler Field use was even before the bond was passed, and so it's, to my knowledge, in regular rotation. So that's something that we could work with Coach Glenn, the Executive Director of Athletics, to see if he has any change or need to change or scheduling maybe that they can do to ensure that, since those changes and maybe downgrades in the facility and facility needs for toileting can be better served elsewhere on our own properties.
Okay,
And
I
then
would
I can,
appreciate that.
well, I was going to say, one thing we can also do in my regular meetings with the city manager is just kind of reinforce the need to maybe put some additional resources into the facility. It becomes a challenge when it's not our asset regarding what we can put into it, but we are a partner. I think there's an opportunity there. But to Christine's point, it has been in rotation for quite some time, but it is something I think we can bring up and maybe with the help of the board, maybe see what we can do there.
Okay.
That is a really good point.
Thank you. And then on behalf of our Ann Richards students then, since they don't have a modernized field, or I don't know that they even have a field, since they are permanently playing at Butler, I just wanted to shout out to them as well if we have a long-term plan, because it doesn't seem like they will be getting another field to play on. So ensuring that they have an opportunity to play on a good field. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hunter.
If we can go back to slide 24. While I'm doing that, I want to share some appreciation. In my community and other communities, there have been a lot of promises made to really do the work that we do with an equity focus in mind. I cannot tell you how pleased I am when I heard like a while ago that the LBJ field was going in, and I appreciate that. I want to be careful here because I don't want to misspeak. In my community, there are lots of ways to bring yourself out of poverty. There are academic scholarships, but we see overwhelmingly in my community that there are sports scholarships, which are getting kids where they need to be. In the current fields that we have, I cannot tell you how many people were shocked and appalled that kids were falling in holes and twisting their ankles, right? Thankfully, no one was injured beyond being able to recover and play to continue on, like our soccer players and our football players. This field, it's a field, it's great, it's wonderful, but it also is a way to create access and opportunity for our students in D1, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, Trustee Hunter, I very much appreciate you sharing that, because I think it kind of reinforces how important it was to get the planning process right. So the equity by design process, I think, created the opportunity to actually explore, what if we did athletic fields across the district? And what if we created opportunity for middle schools to play at the high schools? And what if we actually invested in athletics and viewed athletics as an academic program opposed to something different? I know I wouldn't have graduated high school if it wasn't for athletics, and there are many people that probably wouldn't have as well. And so I think it's a really good way to kind of blend the work we did in the LRP, using the equity by design process, committing to the bond, setting a schedule, having the schedule kind of reflect what we committed to, and then now seeing dirt turn. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it is like a full circle moment, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition.
Thank you for that. Any other questions about this? I have, just before we move on, a couple of appreciations and then quick question. Want to just share appreciation for the interlocal agreement with the city and the district. That is saving our taxpayers money. It is speeding up these projects. It is a great example of collaboration with our city and of our city really investing in our schools as an important part of our community. So real gratitude for the deep work. I know it was not easy to redo that. And it's making a profound difference in what we're able to deliver. So thank you for that. Really want to thank our CBOC. We have a lot of fantastic, important advisory bodies in our district. CBOC is a unique lift. The commitment of the people who serve on the CBOC, there are volumes to read. There are billions of dollars to oversee on behalf of our community. Really appreciate the people who step up to serve, and anyone who is interested. We have immense transparency about our bond, about what's being done, and there's a very long CBOC report published each year that's on the CBOC website. If you go to our advisory body page on our website, you can go to the CBOC page and you can see all the reports online. It's really part of our commitment to our community and our transparency with our community, and we couldn't do it without the volunteers who spend that time and the staff who support them. So thank you for that, and real appreciation for the CAT teams, which again is something we do that we don't, other districts don't do. And it is the point of a CAT team, it's a campus architectural team, is to recognize the people in our community, the people connected to our campuses as experts in that community, experts in what that school needs, and really appreciate leaning into that expertise of someone who may have never been involved in an architectural project before, who has never made those decisions, to bring them in, to think big about what our students need. And the result is a school that every school is unique. Every school reflects the community and is serving the community in unique ways, while they all serve kind of our greater needs, what we need from our facilities. So thank you for that as well to everyone who's serving on that. And I really appreciate the fixtures, furniture, the furniture specifically, that just because it's a new building, we don't have to have all new furniture. We talk a lot about sustainability, and sometimes the most sustainable choice, it's fun to have all new furniture, but sometimes the most sustainable choice is to use what we have that's still working, sustainable economically and environmentally. So I'm really glad to hear that just being considered when it makes sense. So thank you for that. And then I have just the big question, and this could be for the superintendent, whoever you think is best suited to answer this. I think the big question, as we see escalating costs, I know a lot of that was planned for, as we see unexpected changes, do we have enough in the bond to deliver what we promised to our community? Because I think that is the question that matters the most in all of this. We made big promises. We saw how strongly our community showed up for this, and are we going to be able to deliver what we promised?
Yeah, I think we have identified the real concern around the escalating costs, making it difficult to keep the projects in budget. Now, one of the things I tell the team is you only get to build schools one time. And so the things that we're going to do well. But what that means is, with the information we have now, going back and looking at where we can reduce our costs. And at the end of the day, it's not just the value of the bond, it's the cash you have on hand. So for us, it's reducing our costs and also leveraging interest earnings, which, again, it's more of Ms. Montgomery's wheelhouse, but I'm certainly very knowledgeable. And so those two things are what we're converging on to get to a point where we can deliver all of these projects. I'm not going to lie and say there's not going to be some kind of adjustments in scope we may have to consider, but at the time we're comfortable, we'll share those with the CBOC and then bring them to the board. I think ultimately, being 10% off, it is a big number, but it is 10%, and we are, as Jamie said, early in the bond program. We are actually pretty early. It doesn't seem like we're early because it's 2022, but November 2022 it's really the start of 2023. So the goal is to deliver it all. I think it's going to be tight, but honestly, 2017 was tight, 2013 was tight. Every single one of these has been tight over the last, several bond programs. So yeah, we'll get very, very close. My expectation is that we get there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And also just wanted to add appreciation for the detail that's coming about the turf, because I know people are so excited for what that means for students, for safety, for opportunity, for community and connecting. So thank you for that. Thank you for this presentation. Really appreciate the deep dive. And also want to thank all the trustees who have been involved in our two-way community engagement for our listening sessions with our community, about our scorecard, about our academic performance. It is unusual that we have, in our meetings, that we spend this much time talking about things that are not directly a scorecard student outcomes items. And the time we're spending in our community, 2 trustees at a time at least, on our campuses, talking with our community about our scorecard and our student achievement and where we're meeting those metrics and where we still have work to do. Those are student outcomes minutes that that are also balancing out our time to enable us to have these very important conversations about the funds that our community is trusting us with and how we're going to continue to meet our student needs with our budgets. So thank you for that. And anyone who's interested in those meetings who hasn't had an opportunity, we have several more scheduled in April. They're on campuses around our community, but anyone is open to, any of those meetings are open to anyone, and it's a real deep dive into our data, the data that we talk about when we do our outcome monitoring. So thank you for that. So now it's time to move to public testimony for items on our consent agenda. Members of the public wishing to participate in the public testimony portion of our meeting called a dedicated AISD phone line in advance of the meeting to sign up to speak in person or to audio record their remarks. And tonight we have one person who left a recorded message. We'll now play that recorded message for public testimony, so please listen carefully.
Trustees, I'm Joe Reynolds, 2611 West 49th Street, 78731. I'm concerned about the possible excess scale of the redevelopment of the Rosedale site. There needs to be neighborhood compatibility. A bigger issue is stormwater. The site drains into Shoal Creek just a long block west. The creek there regularly exceeds limits. In the 1981 Memorial Day flood, my professor's son drowned washed off the Hancock Bridge. His body was recovered just west of Shoal Creek Boulevard from trees on the creek behind Great Oaks. About 2,500 feet downstream of that, folks drowned in their attics. Through your sale contract, ensure that the new development is of proper scale with parking, and it must have adequate on-site floodwater controls. Thank you.
Thank you to our caller. This concludes our public testimony. Trustees, are there questions or clarifications? Thank you. As a reminder to the public, please feel free to share any general comments or questions on non-voting items with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. We now move to the consent agenda. Trustees, are there any consent items anyone would like to pull for a separate vote? All right. So now we will move. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And Trustee Whitley Chu is acting as our secretary, Vice President Whitley Chu, tonight.
Yes, President Boswell. I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Having a motion by Trustee Whitley Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve our consent agenda. Do we have any discussion?
I'm sorry, did we exclude the items for separate vote?
Yes.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion passes by all those on the dais. Now we move to abstention items for separate vote. Trustee Whitley Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 11.1?
Yes, I move to approve item 11.1, authorize superintendent to negotiate and execute contract to sell former Rosedale School campus.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes. Before I vote on this item, I I want to address my neighborhood where this site is located. This is the site where my daughter learned to ride her bike. It's important part of our community center. It was given to Austin ISD by our community, and our community voted on a bond to build an even more amazing school for the students who were previously served on this Rosedale campus. One of the most beautiful, amazing facilities, which is also in our community, that has a care center for pediatrics. Many of our students get to go to school because they can go on a bridge and get the care they need from Dell Children's, and other children throughout Central Texas come to that school as well. I've had many individual conversations. I've gotten to talk to groups about what's going on here. Our community, engaged in this process, and we're here today, with voting on a different plan than was what everyone wanted, what the district wanted, what the superintendent wanted, and what the board initially wanted for this site. But this is also when we look at our budget, and if we're putting kids first, which my neighborhood does, they voted overwhelmingly to support Prop A, to support all the bonds. And, in my conversations with people, I appreciate the understanding and the love for our district and the sacrifice that's being made here. That will help us a great deal with our budget, and more importantly, a great deal with maintaining the quality of education in Austin ISD. So that is why even though a lot of the things we're voting on in the budget aren't pleasant, but this is an easy decision for me to vote yes, because this is putting kids first, and that's what the Rosedale neighborhood does and always has. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. And I just have a brief comment. I'll be abstaining from this vote, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted as a statement of how I feel. I'm abstaining because of a potential conflict. So having a motion by trustee Whitley Chu and a second by trustee Quintana to approve item 11.1, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Abstaining? And the motion passes with 6 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining. Trustee Whitley Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 11.2?
Yes, I move to approve item 11.2. Yes, I move to approve item 11.2, approval of interlocal corporation contract with University of Texas at Austin on behalf of UIL.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion, trustees, is there any discussion on this item? Having a motion by trustee Whitley Chu and a second by trustee Quintana to approve item 11.2, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Abstaining? The motion passes with 6 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining. Trustee Whitley Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 11.3?
Yes, I move to approve item 11.3, memorandum of understanding between Austin ISD and the University of Texas at Austin College of Education Residency Program, Longhorns and Residents.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustees. Is there any discussion? Having a motion by trustee Whitley Chu and a second by trustee Quintana to approve item 11.3, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Abstaining? And the motion passes. Yeah. Okay. The motion passes.
Correct that. I abstain rather than voting in favor.
Thank you. The motion passes with 6 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstaining. You will see on our agenda that we have items for separate vote listed after an executive session. These include a student transfer appeal and proposed terminations or terminations of some employees. We've moved those as a matter of practice. You'll see that going forward after our executive session. So because of the heaviness of any termination of our staff and wanting to be sure we understand the circumstances and get that right, so we have an opportunity if we need to about any of these individual cases to speak with our counsel before we take that vote. So we will now recess our open meeting at 8:36 p.m. and move to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, 551.0821, and 551.071. When we're finished with the executive session, we'll return to the open session to take action on the items for separate vote that remain and the transfer appeal. Thank you. Hi, the board will now convene the open meeting at 8:57 p.m. And we will now consider employment actions. This is a new way for the board to ensure that trustees can ask questions prior to a final vote, as we said before we went into executive session. And it also provides clarity on potential actions by listing each item individually, and we'll be using this process moving forward. The administration has asked that we not vote on two items that are listed on the agenda, 13.1 and 13.3. Those votes are no longer necessary. So Trustee Whitley-Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 13.2?
Yes, I move to approve item 13.2, proposed termination of professional employee during a term contract, JG.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Trustees, do we have any discussion? Having a motion by Trustee Whitley-Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve item 13.1. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 13.2, pardon me. Having a motion by Trustee Whitley-Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve item 13.2. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed and abstaining? The motion passes by all those on the dais. Trustee Whitley-Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 13.4?
Yes, I move to approve item 13.4, termination of non-Chapter 21 contract employee during the contract term, CI.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
May I make a general comment about okay, I just want to thank the administration for the prompt response to employee misconduct that's harmful to students and the quick action to protect our kids through this action. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, having a motion by Trustee Whitley-Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve item 13.4. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. Trustee Whitley-Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 13.5?
Yes, I move to approve item 13.5, termination of non-Chapter 21 contract employee during the contract term, IR.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Bless you. Having a motion by Trustee Whitley-Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve item 13.5. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. Trustee Whitley-Chu, do we have a motion to approve item 13.6?
Yes, I move to approve item 13.6, termination of non-Chapter 21 contract employee during the contract term, SM.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Having a motion by Trustee Whitley-Chu and a second by Trustee Quintana to approve item 13.6. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. We are also handling a transfer appeal, and I do not have the script. And maybe Trustee Whitley-Chu does. I left the script in the other room. So I'll be back. What? It is item 15.1.
I move to approve item 15.1. No? No?
Oh, thank you. I have it. Thank you very much.
Decision.
Yes.
Like,
So the board at this time will consider one student transfer appeal. We're considering this matter, oh no, we've already done that part. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're now in open session. Do I have a motion on agenda item 15.1, the transfer appeal on behalf of NC?
Yes, I move to uphold the administration's decision in the transfer appeal considered in item 15.1 on behalf of NC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Having a motion by trustee Whitley Chu and a second by trustee Quintana to approve on item 15.1 to affirm the decision of the superintendent and deny the relief requested. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. Thank you. We will now return to closed session at 9:02 p.m. And we will return, we will recess back to the open meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, 551.821, and 551.071. When we're finished with the executive session, we'll briefly return to the open session to formally adjourn the meeting. The adjournment will be recorded and included in all replays of tonight's meeting. Thank you for joining us and have a good evening. Thank you. We'll now reconvene the open meeting at 10:45 p.m. Trustee, someone who has a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 10:45 p.m.